The year is 1917. Imagine a vast country blanketed in snow, its people weary from years of war and hardship. This was Russia, a land on the brink of change, about to be consumed by a brutal civil war. From 1917 to 1923, brother fought brother, families were torn apart, and millions perished in a conflict that would reshape Russia and send ripples across the globe. The Russian Civil War was not a simple clash of armies. It was a complex and chaotic struggle with shifting alliances and ideologies. Imagine a map of Russia, crisscrossed with lines representing the movements of armies, the rise and fall of territories, and the ebb and flow of power. This map, constantly changing, reflects the turbulent nature of the war itself. The war's roots lay in the deep, social and political divisions that had plagued Russia for decades. The overthrow of the Tsar in February 1917 had promised peace and progress, but instead, it unleashed a wave of unrest and violence that would engulf the nation. At the heart of the conflict were two main factions, the Reds and the Whites. The Reds, led by the Bolshevik Party and their charismatic leader Vladimir Lenin, promised a radical transformation of society. They envisioned a communist utopia, free from class oppression and economic inequality. The Bolsheviks, with their distinctive red banners, drew their strength from the industrial workers and the poorest peasants, promising them land, bread, and peace. The Whites, on the other hand, represented a diverse coalition of anti-Bolshevik forces. They were united by their opposition to the Bolsheviks' radical agenda, but divided by their own aspirations for Russia's future. Among them were monarchists who longed for the return of the Tsar, liberals who favored a democratic republic, and socialists opposed to Lenin's authoritarian brand of communism. However, it wasn't just a two-sided war. Smaller factions like the Green Army, composed of peasant rebels fighting for their own vision of land ownership, added another layer of complexity. To make matters worse, foreign powers, sensing an opportunity to advance their own interests, intervened in the conflict, providing military and logistical support to the White armies. To truly understand the Russian Civil War, we must journey back to the tumultuous events of 1917. The February Revolution had toppled the centuries-old Tsarist autocracy, but the new provisional government proved weak and unable to address the pressing issues of the day: the ongoing war with Germany, economic collapse, and widespread hunger. Into this power vacuum stepped the Bolsheviks, a radical socialist party led by the exiled revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. Lenin, a shrewd strategist and a master of propaganda, capitalized on the growing discontent, promising the war-weary population peace, land, and bread. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks seized power in a near-bloodless coup, promising a new era of equality and justice. However, their promises soon gave way to the harsh realities of civil war. The Bolsheviks, facing opposition from within and outside Russia, resorted to increasingly ruthless measures to consolidate their power, unleashing a wave of terror that would claim countless lives. Imagine a map of Russia, once again. From the frozen plains of Siberia to the bustling cities of European Russia, the flames of war spread, engulfing the entire country in a deadly embrace. The early years of the war saw the White armies, backed by foreign powers, advance on several fronts, threatening to strangle the fledgling Bolshevik regime in its cradle. In the east, Admiral Kolchak, a staunch monarchist, led a formidable White army westward, capturing the city of Perm and threatening to link up with other White forces in the south. In the south, General Denikin, a charismatic but ruthless commander, launched a drive towards Moscow, hoping to capture the heart of Bolshevik power. However, the Bolsheviks, under the leadership of Leon Trotsky, proved to be tenacious opponents. Trotsky, a brilliant organizer and a gifted orator, transformed the Red Army from a ragtag collection of volunteers into a formidable fighting force bound by discipline and driven by ideology. Section 5. A People Starving, the Unseen War on Civilians. While the battles raged, a silent tragedy unfolded far from the front lines. The real victims of the war were not the soldiers who died on the battlefield, but the millions of ordinary Russians caught in the crossfire. The war had a devastating impact on the civilian population. Cities were bombarded, villages razed, and entire regions ravaged by famine and disease. The Bolsheviks' policy of war communism, a brutal system of grain requisitioning and economic centralization, exacerbated the suffering. Peasants, forced to surrender their harvests to feed the cities and the Red Army, resisted fiercely, sparking peasant uprisings that further fueled the cycle of violence. The war and the famine that followed claimed millions of lives, leaving a deep scar on the Russian psyche. The human cost of the conflict was immeasurable, leaving a legacy of trauma and loss that would haunt generations to come. Section 6. Victory and its price, the legacy of the Reds and a new Russia. By 1922, the tide of the war had turned decisively in favor of the Reds. The White armies, plagued by internal divisions and dwindling foreign support, crumbled one by one. The Bolsheviks, with their superior organization, their control of the industrial heartland, and their unwavering commitment to victory, emerged triumphant. The victory came at a terrible cost. Russia lay in ruins, its economy shattered, its people exhausted and traumatized. But from the ashes of the old order, a new Russia emerged, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, a vast communist state that would go on to play a pivotal role in world affairs for decades to come. The Bolshevik victory had profound consequences for Russia and the world. It marked the beginning of the world's first communist state, an experiment that would inspire and terrify in equal measure. The Soviet Union, born out of the crucible of civil war, would cast a long shadow over the 20th century, shaping global politics, ideology, and culture for generations to come. Section 7. Beyond Borders: The Global Echoes of the Russian Civil War. The Russian Civil War was not just a domestic affair, its impact reverberated far beyond Russia's borders. The war had a profound impact on the international system, contributing to the rise of new ideologies and the reshaping of global power dynamics. The Bolshevik victory sent shockwaves through the capitalist world, fueling fears of a global communist revolution. Western powers, alarmed by the spread of Bolshevik ideology, sought to contain the Soviet threat, sowing the seeds of mistrust and suspicion that would shape the Cold War in the decades to come. The war also had a significant impact on the international socialist movement. The Bolshevik experiment divided the left, pitting communists against socialists and sparking debates about the nature of revolution, the role of the state, and the meaning of socialism itself. Section 8. Remembering the lost, the human cost of a shattered nation. Amidst the grand narratives of revolution and war, it's easy to lose sight of the human cost of the Russian Civil War. Millions perished in the conflict, victims of violence, hunger, and disease. Countless families were torn apart, their lives shattered by the upheaval and brutality of the war. The war left an indelible mark on the Russian psyche, a legacy of trauma and loss that would resonate for generations. The stories of those who lived through those tumultuous years, the soldiers who fought on both sides, the families torn apart by violence and displacement, the children orphaned by war and famine, serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict. It is our duty to remember these victims, to learn from their suffering, and to strive to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. Remembering the past, however painful, is essential to building a more peaceful and just future. Section 9. A century later. Lessons from the ashes of the Russian Civil War. More than a century after its conclusion, the Russian Civil War continues to hold valuable lessons for our own time. It reminds us of the fragility of peace, the dangers of political extremism, and the devastating human cost of ideological conflicts. The war serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the dangers of unchecked power, the allure of simplistic solutions to complex problems, and the importance of dialogue and compromise in resolving political differences. As we navigate an increasingly polarized world, it's crucial to remember the lessons of the past and to strive for peaceful coexistence, understanding, and respect for human dignity. The Russian Civil War, a tragedy of immense proportions, reminds us that the path to a just and peaceful world is paved with remembrance, reconciliation, and a commitment to building a future free from the scourge of war.